Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Each week, our hosts will be interviewing local, regional, and national business leaders to give you an inside peek into how they lead their business to success in the ever-competitive business climate.
Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee with Inside the Firm. Today I have a very special guest all the way from Georgia. Ken Paskins is the CEO of The Shift Spot and founder of GCE Strategic Consulting. He leads transformative ventures for business owners and is based in Sandy Springs, Georgia. Ken brings 30 years of hands-on experience. He's closed record-breaking deals, served as a fractional COO, and excelled in private equity and mergers and acquisitions. Ken offers practical insights for driving real business transformations. Ken, welcome to the show.
Lance, great to be here. I really appreciate it. Excited.
Yeah. I'm happy to pick your brain this morning. And let's start with, tell us why you got here. You know, are you from a family of entrepreneurs? Are you the first? I'm always curious about the entrepreneurial journey, where the spirit comes from.
Yeah, so I am. So I have come from 4 generations of entrepreneurs, and because of that, I chose not to do that initially. My father and mother were those type of high risk ones that put all their money on red 32, roll the dice, and sometimes it's great, sometimes they failed miserably. And I remember growing up as a kid, money was falling out of the sky, and then the next minute, literally at the age of 10, my mom was asking to borrow money to pay the phone bill. So I took the corporate route initially and went out and gained my experience, managed P&Ls up to $500 million, very large teams of 450 plus. Gained that experience, and then later on in my career got burnt out traveling 150,000 miles a year like a lot of folks, and then I started operating as a fractional COO CEO for a good amount of time, helping basically entrepreneurs or business owners like my father that were struggling get to the next level or see some things that they didn't see, and help them get through that, if you will. And then after seeing a lot of these repeat movies of just people making bad hires, bad financial decisions, et cetera, I created the Shift Spot, and it's a community that surrounds CEOs and entrepreneurs on that journey just to help increase their success rate. So, but that's my journey. It starts at birth, like most of us, in a nutshell.
Yeah. That's wild. It's so crazy to me every time. I love the different answers I get from that question, because it's like, it's either A or B, and people had no entrepreneurs in their family, and then they become like me, this serial entrepreneur that starts business after business after business because they were just like, they hate the anxiety of worrying about money. And then folks like yourself, where I've heard this story too of, my parents were entrepreneurs, and I was like, no, but then you kind of fell back into it. So it seems like there's just like a bloodline there for entrepreneurs and that spirit. Let's jump into the scaling up part of it that you mentioned, and how if people are trying to scale up their company, what do you find are the common and the top reasons why companies can't scale up?
Well, just real quick, and let's look at a couple of statistics before I go there. So you're fortunate, Lance, and you're smart and everything, but there's a lot of entrepreneurs that obviously struggle. If you look at the first year in business, 38% of all companies fail. After year 5, 50% fail, right? And if you look at corporate America, well, all companies across America, 98% are 100 employees or less, and 89 are 20 employees or less. So most business owners are like my father. They learn on the job. They teach themselves about leadership and management. They teach themselves about cash flow statements and P&Ls. And that's complicated, and that adds a lot of failure risk to their company. So the core areas that I see that get in the way of individuals and entrepreneurs as they scale their company are the core areas that we focus on. And it's the basic components of leadership and management of your team, human capital and what that means. So all the HR stuff, if you will, systems and processes. A lot of companies, when they start, they'll continually throw bodies at a problem rather than systemizing and adding processes. And then sometimes they'll go to the extreme and overdo it once they get the hang of that, right? Finances, right? And making decisions with, data and facts versus gut and feel. So we focus on a lot of those things, if you will, and those are generally the things, that I see companies struggle with, when they're starting a business.
Yeah. Can you give an example of, without naming names, a company where you dove in with them, you started working with them, and they just did not have X system in place, and then sort of an example of a system that you helped them implement, and then once they were systematized, things started moving in the right direction.
Yeah, what we'll do is, when we work with a business owner, I mean, most business owners, you sound like you're wired a little differently, but most will not even identify what their core processes are. So we focus on, just building out what your core processes are. So basically, what is our client engagement strategy or process, right? When we roll out a design, what does that look like? What are the checks and the balances there, right? And then any process so identify the top 7 to 9 across a company: new hire process, AP process, AR process. What are the top 7 to 9 core processes? And that's not just with one client, right? But all clients. Identify what those are. And then what you need to do is then put those into what I call a technology container of some sort. So if you have say a sales process that you need to build to increase your odds of success, look at putting that into a CRM. Does that make sense?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's also, the accountability part of running a company.
Yeah,
holding yourself accountable, holding employees, holding consultants. Do you have any tips for us about how CEOs can?
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. And understanding, I actually just put out an article on this. It's not out yet. I just recorded something yesterday on this, but understanding accountability is actually, it's challenging, I think, for individuals, to be quite honest. I'll hear some owners say, so-and-so just doesn't hold so-and-so accountable. I'm under the personal belief, Lance, that people want to be held accountable, right? And if we've hired the right individuals that fit within our core values of an organization, but oftentimes when we're not getting the results that we want out of that individual and they're not being accountable per se, it often falls on us. So we can solve some of those problems just with keeping some of these basic concepts in mind. So first of all, try to make sure that the expectations are clear, right? And generally I'll see this problem bubble up when, let's say I was working with you, Lance, and I hear, I don't know why they don't roll out the designs I do the way I do. I don't understand why they don't have the conversations with the client I do. I don't know why they don't see this. Well, we think that through our head, but unless we put that down on paper or have those conversations or set that clarity, we can't expect our people to do that, right? So a lot of times what I will like to do and ask people to do is put together what you call it, the golden rules, the 10 commandments, whatever that is, and those core expectations for your team member. Review them quarterly with them, and then reflect back on them if you ever run into a problem. So 2 things that I always have in those are show up on meetings on time. Another one that I always have in there is don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution, right? And let's talk through it, right? If you want to bounce that idea across. But make sure that that is clear, right? So now that we've established those clear expectations, make sure that you're also holding yourself accountable, right? So I tell business owners a lot of times, expect 90% of your team of what you're willing to give. Meaning, if I show up late to all my meetings, if my work is sloppy, if I don't follow up, then I should not, question why my team doesn't follow up with my clients, why my team shows up late to meetings, and why their work is sloppy. So we've got to walk the talk and actually hold ourselves accountable and paint that picture. Another tip is hold everybody accountable equally, right? And I think that if you look at smaller companies, specifically when they get going, we have some favoritism. Well, Jimmy is my brother, right? Susie's been here 8 years. Tommy is just Tommy, and we accept it, right? That puts a significant burden on your high performers and your other employees that may be on a different level per se. And that actually drives down engagement. It drives down accountability, and it drives down results. And then just create an entire culture of accountability. reward those that are accountable and deliver the results that you want and expect from your organization, and for those that don't fit in, know when to cut ties. But if we go out and if we hire the correct individual, right, onboard them correctly, and they fit our core values, and we do those things to drive accountability, then you're ultimately going to have accountability with your organization. And like I said, I do believe that most humans are wired to want to be accountable, want to serve a greater purpose, and want to do well and deliver results. And the ones that don't, if we've done and laid out that groundwork, then that's on them.
Yeah,
But it
100%.
starts with us.
It really does. Yeah. Let's move to vision. So, there's a lot of talk from different business coaches and mentors and that sort of thing about like how you put together your company's vision. When you're coaching people and working with them, CEOs, how does that strategy work?
So, I mean, first of all, any CEO is going to have together what their typical vision is, but at a high level. But generally, most of them don't put it down on paper. So I like to actually get it down on paper, and it all starts with actually, what are your core values of the organization? Because that, in my opinion, wires everything. Right? We want to work with people that fit our core values. We want to attract those clients. We want to go to market that way. Right. And then set out a long BHAG per se, such as we're going to be the largest architecture firm in North America. We're going to be the best architecture firm in Colorado, whatever that is. Set some grand vision in the future, right, of where you're going, so the employees can actually see themselves growing from a career perspective, a financial perspective, a benefits perspective. Establish that, right? Make sure that you also have a clear niche and a greater purpose of, what it is you're trying to actually fill, right? So I don't know your firm, but some firms will say we want to have we want to leave no person without a house, right? So that's something for people to get behind, right? And all of our designs are created towards making sure that we leave every human being with their house. That may not be the best vision ever, like but that's a thought. And then, make sure that you break it down into also a 3-year objective and a 1-year objective. And then recast that vision continuously, right? So what I mean by that, a lot of people are one and done. We'll give a great annual speech to our team. We'll assume that it is sunk in and we'll go on our way. But it's not. So we've got to recast that on a quarterly basis. We've got to have that discussion passionately with employees at all times. And we've got to make sure that they're on the same page and understand that, where we're going. And keep in mind that most humans, I say most, but statistically it says all humans need to hear things 7 times. So you've got to repeat this, right? So and something else to think about too is some humans are audio and some people are visual as well. I haven't tried to pay attention to you, but if you're the type of individual that says, I hear you, Ken, you're an audio guy. So I've got to cast that message audio for you. If you say, I see where you're coming from, you're more visual. So I've got to use that as well. And understanding, how many times they've cast out a vision, the different ways to cast it and everything is extremely important. And then as you go and grow your organization, I like to create these environments to bring the employees in and also help them help evolve my vision as well. So your show, we'll call it, Coffee with Lance on Fridays. Right. But paint the picture with your employees that, hey, this is going to be a time to sit down with Lance every Friday. And we're going to talk through, what you're seeing in the market, some of the challenges with your clients, give you the opportunity to open up and ask me some questions on a very casual basis. And then take that as a CEO and a visionary and make sure you're constantly molding and adjusting your vision where necessary.
I love that. The flexibility part of it is something I honestly hadn't heard for a while. And we've had a couple hundred guests on the show, in your sort of position. And when I was reading through your bio, there was a lot of acronyms thrown out. And one that stuck out to me is the KPI. So tell our audience who might not know what a KPI is and how we can create KPIs for our companies that matter.
Yeah, key performance indicators, right? So key performance indicators, the best way to do it is, I'm going to use a healthcare term, cradle to grave, because people can basically, as regardless of the industry, you can associate cradle to grave. It's a continuum, right? But get a whiteboard. I think a lot of people, when they start developing their KPIs, will just go, oh, we need to know how long does it, I'm trying to be an architect, Lance, and I'm not. How long does it take to generate a quote? How long does it take to pump out a design? And we'll try to hardwire those KPIs, right? We want to establish and set up KPIs that are basically 70% leading indicators, 30% lagging indicators. A lagging indicator is what we have done, right? But whiteboard everything. So deal one or project final billing out, and then go all the way back, and every single thing that happens all along the line. So this architect hands it to this architect. This happens here, to where, hey, AdWords money put in $1,000 generates one quote, etc. List out every single thing from cradle to grave on a whiteboard, and then you can break those down. And you will then, at that point, you'll see operational KPIs, you'll see financial KPIs, you'll see marketing KPIs, sales KPIs, all across the business, and then break those down from a departmental level. But that is the best way to do it. And I challenge people not just to think what they think they are, but to actually take the whiteboard and write out everything. What is the client journey? How do they flow through the organization towards what does an invoice create to when does it turn into cash in my bank account? And you've got to understand all of that. And then that's going to give us really good indicators on cash flow projections and other things that keep you healthy.
Beautiful. I always like to pick people's brains about stories. I would love if you could share with us a shocking story in the positive of the business and a negative.
A shocking what? A good one and a negative?
Yeah, is that possible?
All right. So unfortunately, the negative is the biggest scars in us, right? So let me start with the negative. So I had this guy maybe 7 years ago reach out to me about a $10 million company out in Puerto Rico. And he called me. The guy was 28 years old. He had an online supplement company. And he called me and said, hey, look, my COO and I have been working together for years. We've agreed that eventually someday we'll get to a certain point and we will outgrow each other. And I think we might be at that point. I'd like you to come in and kind of investigate things. And we agreed we'd go our separate paths, graciously. I can't say that word right today, but anyways. So I get in there, and within 2 weeks, I told him, I said, you got to fire this person. And he was beside himself. And he's like, why? I was like, she's cancerous. She's this, she's doing this, she's doing that. So my entire company's built upon her. She owns all the relationships with the manufacturers and the distributors and all of this stuff. Is can't do this. It's like, all I can do is expose the problems. It's your call, right? What do you want to do? He's like, well, we're going to wind her down over 3 months. He's like, can you step in during that time at a greater amount and help me? And I said, I can do that, but I'm advising against that. So I get deeper within the company, and within a month, realize that this person has embezzled $250,000 from him, right? She has isolated finance and other groups and set it up where she controls everything. Did further investigation. This person had 6 different aliases, right? I never knew this before, Lance, but she evidently, if you watch Suits, I actually learned in Suits, or saw this on Suits, but evidently to call prisoners, there's a special phone line and phone company or whatever set up for prisoners. And I assume it's to record the conversations or whatever. She had a phone service into the prisons. Right. So, buying airline tickets for her family and all this stuff. And it was just nasty. So we engaged counsel at that point. Counsel said, basically, look, you might spend over $500,000, dump a lot of money in this. She may countersue and you may not get anything in return. Right. So, he kind of advised against it. So I had to help this guy, unfortunately, unwind his business, sell off his IP to protect himself, because she had also tarnished a lot of relationship with the distributors and other companies that were then threatening to sue him to protect him. So that was pretty scary and nasty. And that took about six months to actually help him begin the unwinding process and everything. So I don't see that a lot, but the lesson learned is, due diligence with hiring, have a great hiring process, check your references, never trust people just by what they say, if you will. And there were a lot of lessons learned there. So that is a tragic one. As far as your other question, what was it, please?
Well, basically, yeah. So, I mean, that was very interesting. Thank you for that. Like, completely unique, like you said. A positive story about that would shock us. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
there isn't one.
No, actually, one that comes to mind is actually one in our community. So in our community, we have these sessions every week, and where you can imagine a bunch of CEOs sitting around a table, and it's professionally facilitated, and they bring some of their biggest problems to the table. And this one comes to mind. And there was this guy that, ironically, it's not like we have a niche in supplements, but there's this guy that had 16 stores, and he'd been in the supplement and healthcare and, we'll call it woo-woo space for 16 years as well. Ironically, 16 stores and everything. But he was struggling because he found himself in a position where he had a leadership team that had been with him for a long time. And he was making all the excuses in the world for them on why they were not succeeding, why they didn't do what he said, why they didn't follow through. And they gotten a bit lazy. And he was bearing the brunt of this because he was paying the financial penalties. And so he found himself in a situation where he was going to have to look at doing some layoffs and cutting some people. And he's never had to do that. He's one of the type that none of us like to fire, but some of us know when we have to. And he didn't want to do that at all. So we started talking through the problem, and we, one of the CEOs of the table said, look, we're looking at this incorrectly. It's like, we can look at the bottom line, but let's also look at the top line. And two of the things that we came up with were, ironically, one of them was recast the vision and resetting the expectations across the leadership team. So we began that path, and that was my idea. A lot of the same track that I just shared with you. The other one was, let's look at how you go to market with your products. Let's look at changing that a little bit and doing something unique. So he was a basic online, and had retail stores as well, where you go buy your supplements, have them shipped to your house. He had a ton of loyalty. So we created not only a loyalty program, but a monthly membership program, and actually did some creative packaging and everything that then helped actually increase his top line over a 9-month period by 30%. And with that, he didn't have to make any cuts. Right? He didn't have to make any cuts. And then he also made sure that his vision was not only understood, but the expectations of his team was understood. And he began to put himself in a position where he was back in control of his business. So I think that's probably the one thing that comes to mind. I think the poor guy in Puerto Rico and the supplement business reminded me of him because of similar industries, but that's a positive story anyways.
Yeah. One of the keys that we found in our two small companies, which are in that 98% that you mentioned earlier, is that the only way, one of the key things in order to grow your business is you got to figure out how you're not going to work in it all the time. Like I'm not here drafting anymore, right? I'm doing business development of it. How can others start doing that, working on their business versus in it all the time?
Yeah, so great phrase. We talk about it all the time. I think it's the buzzword out there these days. But working on the business is doing what you're doing, right? So you're doing this podcast. You're getting your brand out. You're working more strategically. I gotta assume that this feeds you and you have fun doing it as well. And we do that also. You're having strategic relationships and focusing on where we're going to be in 3 to 5 years from now. So that's where everybody wants to get, Lance. And I hope you're there now. And if you're not, you're you're probably getting close, right? Working in the business is doing the design work. I'm doing my finances, I'm micromanaging my team, I'm doing all the hard work. I'm questioning why I ever got into business. I'm wondering if I should go backwards and scale backwards and just be a solo architect, right? So that's very painful. So the best ways to get there, obviously, is first of all, it starts with you, right? You've got to become a solid leader and manager of people and understand what that means. You've got to be able to cast that vision. You've got to surround yourself with the right people that fit the core values of your organization. You've got to make sure that you have all the right people in the right seats. And then you've got to make sure that you understand the basic concepts of delegating out and trust but verify, right? And then once you get those points in place, it's sharpening the sword. And once again, all the core areas that we focus on, it's your finances, your leadership and management, human capital, systems and processes, and then systemizing your core processes across the organization. But once you get those foundational things in place, that's when you can begin to elevate, right? But it always starts with us. And if we as an individual can't begin to grow as leaders and managers and then get those right people in and understand and cast our vision out and then delegate and then build upon those basic foundation pieces, we're never going to get there. And it sounds easy, but it's not, and it's not, and it takes a lot of time and it takes personal commitment.
Yeah. So there's leadership, there's management, key differences.
Yeah, at a very high level, leadership is setting that vision, right? That's one of the things. Management is setting correct expectations and giving the person the right tools and the things that they need to do their job on a day-to-day basis. So if I have high expectations that you deliver, and once again, I'm trying to pretend to understand architecture, but you deliver high-end designs every single day, but I don't give you the software to do that, right? I expect you to do it with a number 2 pencil like the old days and paper. Yep. Right? Then I'm not giving you the tools that you need to succeed, and I'm not managing you correctly. But it's a little bit more complicated than that, but being the leader is casting that vision, that direction, where we're going and everything. The manager it's a little tighter. The tools, that one-to-one connectivity and that expectation setting.
Yeah, beautiful. I think you're spot on, obviously. 2 last questions here as we run up on the half hour, Ken. Sure. First one is, knowing what you know now, and if you could go back in time to when you first started the Shift Spot, what is one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Probably the same advice that I've given every owner. It's be more patient and know specifically startups take longer than you think, right? I've done M&A, I've been involved in, VC stuff, PE stuff and everything, and buying a business and then polishing up and tweaking it and changing it is simple. Taking the idea and then redoing that idea through alphas and betas and testing that. And not only that, but don't fall, and I'm giving you a bigger answer than you expected. Don't fall in the trap that I know the answer, I'm just going to stick to it. If you're not getting your clients, if you're not delivering the service, then something's missing. And take the time to question yourself and reflect, and don't be scared to change things periodically. So that'd be the advice I'd give myself and any person that's looking to create a startup, something from scratch.
Yeah, I love that. Ken, thank you so much for your time today. If people want to check out you, they want to go to the Shift Spot and maybe become a member, where can they follow you, get in touch?
Yeah, so 2 things. Do that, www.theshiftspot.com. And my partner tells me all the time, you don't have to say www. I haven't taught myself that yet, right? But another thing for your listeners, we have something to offer, actually. theshiftspot.com/gap. And we're going to give this to 2 of your listeners that will go in and type in the promo code inside the firm. And it's a gap analysis. It's about a $5,000 value, but it's an extensive questionnaire that goes across their entire business, from financials to operations to sales to marketing, simple things such as, do you have financial controls in place? And if so, what are they? To how do you onboard employees? And it helps give visibility to business owners and entrepreneurs that might be stuck and struggling, but not know why. And we'll have that conversation and pick 2 of your listeners and help them through that process.
Beautiful. Ken, thanks so much again. We appreciate your time. We wish you guys nothing but success, and really appreciate what you're doing for the business community.
Lance, I appreciate it. It's been a blast.